Hey guys, it's Cameron, and I wanted to share with you all of the mistakes I made to break into tech so you can avoid the rejections, ghostings, and disappointment that I personally had to go through to get into the position that I'm into today. If you don't know if you don't know me or too much about me, I'm a six-figure 23-year-old ex-Apple engineer actively in the industry with, a first-class degree, published research, multiple certifications, so on and so on. So I've really kind of seen it all when it comes to this kind of stuff, and this is exactly why I wanted to make this type of video. So let's actually just kind of like talk about the mistakes that I went through, right? I'm going to kind of detail everything that you need to know so then you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did, so you can ultimately break into tech faster and also to the upper echelons much more quicker as well. So the first thing that I noticed, and this was kind of when I was starting off my kind of tech journey into a tech career, but it was from the ages of like 17, maybe 18. And what I noticed was, and I did this because I noticed that projects, you do need projects to break into tech, right? And that is accurate, that is true. But there's different types of projects that you can have. I started off at 17 trying to break into tech by building this massive, large-scale project for tech. So I was building out like this entire like platform, infrastructure, this massive tool. It took about 6 months to make, like to be completely honest, and it was a long time that it took me to do this. I put in a lot of work, a lot of features, I would plan everything out, I would feel productive as I was doing it, but I wasn't actually assessing if the results were also going to be similar and based on that. Now, after I finished this project, I was like, great, this is fantastic, this is perfect, I've perfected this 100%, I've added everything that I possibly want into it. So then I actually listed it on one of my portfolios, and no one saw it. It got no attention, right? Recruiters didn't really know what it was. Hiring managers weren't that impressed because, I wasn't really getting that much attention when I was 17. So it kind of just went a bit to waste, and it kind of just made me kind of think back to myself and think, right, well, was that even kind of worth it, right? So the mistake here that I made was making this massive, big project, thinking that the market's going to want it, it's going to make me be hired in tech, no problem, that kind of stuff. But in reality, all I simply did was waste 6 months of looking busy. So in terms of this mistake, what I would do differently if I had to go back into the past is I would do lots of different small mini projects to hold a lot more weight than one particular big project. So you could have, let's say, instead of one big project that takes 6 months, or let's say 3 months actually, one big project instead of 3 months. Instead, you could have 15 small mini projects, each kind of talking about something specifically regarding your skill set, expertise, and experience. So you could have a project on, like, I don't know, like some sort of coding thing, and then you can have another project on something else, and so on and so on. And you're showcasing various different parts of your skill sets off without having to have one big, large-scale project. Now, this also makes it a lot easier for visibility as well, because it's a lot easier for people to view and see one of your projects opposed to one big project, right? Because if you've got 15 small ones, you've got 15 times more chances someone is going to discover one of those, right? Whether you've listed that on your CV, on your LinkedIn, online, and just naturally stumbled across it, they're going to have a 15 times more chance of actually seeing that, opposed to one big project where you only really have one chance of seeing that. So make sure to not ever really build out big projects unless you already have small projects on your portfolio. And that's something that I genuinely wish that I knew sooner, because if I genuinely did, I would have been so much more ahead of the game. I probably would have broken into tech even faster. Now, the next piece of advice and the next mistake that I made was not applying to everything. I thought that, these roles were only specifically tailored and catered towards a certain person or certain types of people, and if I didn't see myself in the same way as those people did, then I shouldn't apply. And that, without me knowing, but that was actually hindering my progression into tech, right? And that's because I was missing out on loads of different opportunities to ultimately break into tech, right? So I noticed this a bit later on. So I'm 23 now, I noticed this probably about the ages of 19, 20. But if you genuinely apply to everything that you have a somewhat okay chance of getting, even if it requires 2 to 3 years worth of experience, then that is a good sign, right? even if you don't strictly meet the requirements, right? And I'll give you kind of like a tech story from myself regarding this, right? So when I applied for the Apple internship, there was 5 requirements for the bullet points. I think one of them I didn't have, right? So I had 4 out of 5. Now, if I had that same mindset from when I was like 17, 18, I wouldn't have applied. And I wouldn't have ever gotten the Apple internship, and I wouldn't have ever gotten the Apple graduate offer, and all of the tech success that I've had after that, right? So if I genuinely had that same mindset, then I wouldn't have actually applied, and I wouldn't have actually gotten that position. So even if you don't strictly meet the requirements, you can still apply. And the reason for that is because companies, they have an idea of the ideal candidate, but they're not 100% sure, right? And they're also not too sure who that is as well. So you want to make sure that you're actually applying so they can actually assess you appropriately, because maybe you'll have a skill set in a different quality that kind of outweighs the one in the requirements that you didn't have, right? So that's something that's very important, right? So if you understand the role, you feel like you can genuinely do it, and you have like majority of the requirements, right? Still apply, even if it takes like even if it says like 2 to 3 years experience, still apply, because it's actually going to give you the opportunity to actually discuss this, talk about it in an interview, and ultimately be seen by someone. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, so make sure that you are actually applying for really anything that you feel like you genuinely have a decent chance of actually obtaining, even if it's outside of your comfort zone or slightly above the position that you're wanting, right? Maybe you're going for entry level, still apply to some mid-level ones, right? So just kind of do that, right? And that's something that I wish that I did, and I wish that I knew sooner, because that also, once again, it hindered my progress. And specifically regarding getting interviews and things like that, because of course, if you're not applying, you're not really going to get any interviews. So that's something that I genuinely wish that I started sooner, and I wish I found out a bit sooner. So yeah, just make sure that you're applying to everything that you feel like you have a decent chance of actually getting, regardless of if you meet all of the requirements that are very strict. Now, another one is going to be knowing what you're worth, right? So this is going to be to ensure that you're being paid fairly. It's going to be, to ensure that you actually are happy with, what you're being paid, the benefits, and that kind of stuff. I almost lost my train of thought there, but yeah, it's about making sure that you genuinely are happy with the role and the compensation that you're going to be awarded for doing that. So it's important to know your worth early on. Now, it's quite hard to do this when you're kind of new to the market, so you're not in tech yet, or maybe you're in tech, but you're not really too sure about, what other roles are paying and that kind of stuff. So here's some sort of categories and sections that you can actually look at and think back to yourself and see kind of where you fit in with these and what number you typically will come back to. So the first one is going to be based on your skill set. Do you feel like you can solve hard, complex problems for the company? Now, if the answer is to that yes, then you're typically going to be paid more for that. If you're just starting out, the basics of coding, that kind of stuff, then maybe it'd be slightly lower. So it'd be based on skill set and also experience as well, if you have any that's technical. It's also going to be the confidence in yourself to know your stuff. So confidence in your skill set, confidence in the ability to perform the role that you're actually looking at on the job description. And also about the job market in general, really. Like you need to do some additional research on the job market to see what other roles are paying for similar types of work with similar types of skill sets and experience. And then from there, you can kind of slot yourself into the gaps and kind of see roughly where you would be kind of lying as well. So yeah, it's going to be looking at your skill set, your experience, your confidence in your skill set, and the responsibilities to perform the role, and also the job market as well. And this is ultimately to be paid what you're worth and also know what you're worth, right? If you don't know what you're worth, it's a lot easier to be underpaid, right? And no one wants to be underpaid for the value that they provide. So make sure that you understand how much you're worth, and can you get this from certain roles that you're ideally wanting to go after as well. Now, another one is going to also be that to not follow everybody else, right? And I wish I've said this probably about all of them, right? But I genuinely wish that I knew about this particular one sooner. And the reason for this is because I spent probably about 1 to 2 years just following everybody else, right? Following random advice on LinkedIn, on YouTube from people who haven't even really broken into tech yet, or just generic basic advice. like use this CV, use this cover letter. I use all of them. I've used every single one under the sun. None of them changed really in any significance. And I was just kind of following everybody else. I was following everybody to the point where I was getting the same results as everybody else, right? If you're learning from someone and they haven't done, I guess, like, let's say they get to a certain level, then the most, if you copied everything to a T exactly as they said, you're only ever going to get to the exact same level that they're in. So if they're in an entry-level tech role, if you copy all of the advice underneath the sun, you're only ever going to amount to an entry-level tech role, right? Of course, you can then progress on your own accord after that, but that won't be necessarily because of your mentor, because they didn't have the knowledge or experience to actually coach you to an above level. So if you learn from everybody else and you copy everybody else, you're basically just going to be another sheep, another piece of cattle, following all of the other sheep. And that's going to make it a lot harder to actually stand out and be hired, because you're going to be copying the same as everybody else. You're going to be having the same LinkedIn, the same headlines, you're going to be having the same CV format, the same cover letter, using the same phrasing, the same wording, the same projects on your portfolios, all of these things, right? And these are going to be things that ultimately are going to harm you, because the companies are then going to sit back to themselves. Let's say that you've gotten a few interviews and they now need to make an offer to one of the candidates, and let's say that there's 5, and they're all looking the same. On paper, they all look the same, the knowledge, they all look the same. Well, they're going to just pick someone out of those 5, and it may potentially not be you. You'd have a 1 in 5 chance in that case, right? And that's going to harm you, because you're going to be seen more as a commodity, the same as everybody else, opposed to being unique and specific for the skill sets and experience that you have and how you also portray yourself. So that's something that you do need to be aware of, and I wish I knew about that sooner, but don't follow everybody else, because it will lead you to average results and common results, because you would be a commodity. So someone who's average, who copies average results, right? So if you genuinely want extraordinary results, you have to learn from extraordinary people and follow their guidance, opposed to just following everybody else, because most people are struggling to break into tech. So if you copy them, you're also going to be struggling to break into tech. But yeah, in terms of, oh yeah, by the way guys, like if you want any help with this kind of stuff, like anything that I've mentioned, any of this, I'll pop a link in the top of the description, and we can discuss me helping you and us working together, so I can help you a bit further. But yeah guys, honestly, that's all of the mistakes, or most of the mistakes that I've made to ultimately become an Apple engineer at the ages of 20 and on over 6 figures. But if you want to, and feel free to do this guys, but if you want to post your tech stories in the comments for this kind of stuff, right? Like the mistakes that you've had and things like that, it can actually teach other people in the comment section, right? So you can learn from other people, you can learn what mistakes they did and how to actually kind of prevent you from falling into the same pitfalls as well. So feel free to do that guys, but that's pretty much all of the advice I wanted to give for this. Make sure that you do understand it and everything like that. Feel free to watch this back or take notes if you want to, but that's pretty much everything for this video.